Hi, I'm Tito Kohut. I'm the managing editor at Viola Nation. You can find us at violanation.com or at viola_nation on Twitter. You can also search Viola Nation for our podcast on whichever podcast site you use. Going back to Saturday's festivities, I think Fiorentina were pretty unlucky even before kickoff. Losing Nicolas Gonzalez to COVID quarantine definitely didn't help. He's Fiorentina's most dynamic attacker. His pace, his ability to carry the ball, and just his genuine talent, his ability to make things happen on the counter or against an engaged defense was clearly missed. Riccardo Saponara, great technique, wonderful passing vision, but lacks the athleticism to really make an impact a lot of the time. And Jose Callejon, despite having his best game for Fiorentina this year, playing in a few good crosses, just doesn't have the ability to beat a man at this point in his career. That said, I think that Fiorentina did very well from the start. They pressured Juventus really well, which kept Federico Chiesa and Paulo Dybala off the ball. They both had a few decent moments, but were largely very quiet. I think a lot of that is that Fiorentina were solid at the back, Lucas Martinez Quarta especially, but also Nikola Milenkovic were sound, both positionally and in the tackle, albeit perhaps a little too physical. Lucas Torreira was also wonderful, nullifying Dybala between the lines. I think where Fiorentina really thrived in attack was capitalizing on Chiesa and Dybala's defensive shortcomings. Biraghi at left back and Alvaro Odriozola at right back were constant threats on the overlap, Odriozola especially, getting forward and putting a lot of stress on Alexandro, as Dybala didn't protect his fullback at all. Unfortunately, Fiorentina did not get enough bodies in the box to really capitalize on these situations. One of Giacomo Bonaventura or Gaetano Castrovilli really needed to get in and make those runs at the post. The one time that Castrovilli did in the first half, it created a double chance for Fiorentina as Mattia Perin made a fingertip save to divert the cross away from him, and then was lucky to get the save on the ensuing cross back in. I think the big talking point for a lot of Fiorentina fans is obviously going to be the second yellow card for Nikola Milenkovic. While Chiesa certainly went down very softly, I don't think anyone can argue that it wasn't a fully deserved second yellow. Milenkovic has developed a little bit of a habit, I think, of making poor challenges, especially in the open field and especially late in games. I don't know if that's a fitness issue or a mental issue or some combination of them. I think the real problem here, though, is not so much the Milenkovic mistake, which was significant. I think it's more an indictment on Vincenzo Italiano. He should have really solidified his team earlier. At that point, with Milenkovic already booked, and look at how open the field was on that counterattack, there needed to be more midfield cover. There needed to be more bodies back. That would have been the right time to bring in Alfred Duncan, or maybe Sofian Amrabat, any other midfielder who could have helped cover. Unfortunately, I think that Italiano's style requires sending players forward constantly. When that does leave Fiorentina open on the break a lot, and that exposes the defenders, I think that's why you've seen so many red cards for the team this year. I think it's also why Fiorentina are yet to draw. It shows that they have an admirable desire to get forward and score goals, but they're still a little bit too naive. And I think that reflects their manager, who is, after all, in just his second year as a Serie A manager. So while the loss was absolutely wrenching, felt terrible, we all sort of expected it. After all, this is Juventus. Fiorentina have never won 2 league matches in a row at Juventus. This is just what happens when it's Fiorentina and the Bianconeri. We expect it, even though we hate it. That said, I do think some of the refereeing decisions from Simone Sozza were pretty poor. Matthijs de Ligt, I think, in particular, got very lucky, got away with some pretty questionable things. In particular, he clawed Terracciano in the eyeball after the goalkeeper went up for a corner in the first half, got away with it without even having a foul called on him. And I think that would have to be a yellow card under pretty much any circumstance. He also avoided getting a booking for dragging down Dusan Vlahovic after the striker had rolled him right at the edge of the box and was clearly heading towards goal. I think that's very clearly a booking for anyone else. I'm not sure how you could argue that it wasn't. That said, Fiorentina clearly need to mature just a little bit more until they are ready to compete for probably the Champions League places, but I think they're still probably in with a decent chance of qualifying for Europe by the end of the season.